Welcome back to the PricePlow Podcast. We are here with Ed Dosz of NutriScience Innovations. He's the VP of Science and Innovation. Welcome aboard, Ed. We're going to be talking about MalTor, which we briefly covered, but we actually met earlier in Washington, D.C. a couple years ago at one of the NPA events. So it's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us here.
Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here.
Awesome. So what I'd like to do is first off, I'm going to crack my C4. So what we're going to do is I'd like to get an introduction to you, talk about some of your scientific background, some of the things that you've done before, and then let's dive into MalTor. I think there's a pretty cool story behind it when we were talking about taurine, which has been in the industry forever, but making some improvements on basically making it work better. So the floor is yours. But first, give us a nice introduction to yourself, and maybe we can tie it into how we met a couple years ago.
Sure, that's great. So I have my PhD in food science with a heavy focus on human nutrition. I got that at the University of Illinois. I was researching what our industry would call nutraceuticals before I even knew what nutraceuticals were. I was looking at bioactives in broccoli, how to increase and retain those bioactives in broccoli so they don't degrade while people are cooking them, in particular sulforaphane. From glucoraphanin, the glucosinolates, and didn't really know what dietary supplements were, which I feel like was kind of common back in 2005, 2006. Became more of a sports exercise enthusiast myself at that time, as I feel like a lot of college undergrads do. And got really familiar really quick, moved into the food science department, really just took off from there. And when I graduated, I moved into the food industry. I was working at Tyson Foods for a little while, but it wasn't really a passion. It wasn't a passion I had to the extent that dietary supplements were. And then I got involved with Now Foods, which is a pretty well-respected name in our industry on the branded ingredient side. So I started in research and development there, formulating some of their many products that they have out in the market, and eventually transitioned into the science team there, which does more of the deep dive stuff on the research that's done behind ingredients, as well as regulatory of those dietary ingredients. And that's really where we met, Mike. Went to one of the fly-in days with the NPA. It was great meeting you there. Kind of learned a little bit more about the regulatory landscape of this industry. And after spending around 9 years at Now Foods, decided I kind of wanted to venture into the individual ingredients side. So instead of having ingredients presented to me while I was at Now Foods, wanted to get involved a little earlier, where I have an influence over the clinical research that's actually done on the products, kind of knowing what the brands want to see or need to see. So that's really how I moved into NutriScience.
Awesome. So I'm imagining Now Foods was a really good background for that, because it's a very, like you said, very well respected company. We have the highest praises for Now, and CEO Jim Emmy, who we always meet there at those DC events. And I have to imagine that a company like that is not going to just put any old ingredient into a supplement, so that you pretty much come into NutriScience with what I'm guessing is a very high level of scrutiny.
Absolutely. I will give it to Now. They're very rigorous in their evaluations. They like to see human clinical studies, sometimes multiple human clinical studies on the same ingredient, that help validate the structure function language that gets used on products. They're straight shooters, absolutely. And I feel like it was the 9 years there, kind of touching on actual production, manufacturing, so knowing what people need to see in those spaces when they're trying to formulate capsules, tablets, flavored products, ready to mixes, is an invaluable piece of experience that I really appreciate highest praise for Now Foods, and now I can say they're customers of ours for a number of our ingredients that we offer. So it was a great level of experience.
Awesome. So so now you're on the other side, like you said, you get to see things a little earlier, which is why we like the ingredient side too, of course. Kind of get to see a glimpse of the future. But can you give us the introduction to NutriScience Innovations?
Sure. NutriScience has been around for around 20 years at this point. Started off a little heavier in the commodity space, and has really redefined themselves as a company that focuses on clinically validated, branded or specialty ingredients, kind of bringing a gold standard level of documentation, regulatory expertise, and science to the products that we offer. So we have a handful of commodity ingredients that we still offer, but we've really changed our focus to look at the branded specialty ingredients that have or will have the scientific evidence that reputable brands want and need. We have a very clearly defined roadmap for science that we're looking forward to conducting in the future on a lot of our ingredients, and the level of clinical evidence we put together for all of our ingredients, whether it's through partnerships with CROs, universities, is just really second to none.
Can you really quickly say what a CRO is for some of the listeners who might not know?
Sure, it's a place where it's essentially a contractor for research. Mm-hmm. So it's a lab that isn't necessarily affiliated with any company, but you can work with them, partner with them on designing a research protocol. They will work through the recruitment phases, conduct the research, make sure you have IRB approval, things of that level. The hurdles you have to go through to conduct clinical research, they take care of a lot of that part, but work with you very closely to design the study to look at what you are interested in looking at.
How involved in the design of those studies are you personally, Ed?
Very, very heavily. Myself and our Chief Science Officer, Michael Layla, we're there from the conceptual design throughout the data collection, the statistical analysis that takes place. We like to ensure that the research we conduct is published, because that's really what the whole point of this is to have that in the public domain where things are being peer reviewed. So you're not, no one wants to be, especially us, we don't want to be a fly-by-night company here. So we do things the right way. Michael and I have the experience to ensure that gets done, that manuscripts gets published, and things are truly looked into. We're not just throwing out claims and statements to companies without the validation required to say them.
Could you tell us some reasons why that's important? I understand, between the three of us, we might understand, but there's a lot of consumers that listen to this podcast that might not realize things that could go wrong or things that could make a study not be super reputable. How do you combat that? Sure,
absolutely. When you're publishing in a journal, you want to make sure even if it's an open access journal, which means it's freely available for people to access. You don't have to pay $85 for 2 hours of access to one article, which is sometimes the case. The peer review process in that is really important. So you have a group of your peers reviewing your protocol design, what the findings were, the way you conducted your statistical analysis, what your conclusions are. Honestly, it's great to list challenges that you had in the study as well, because things don't always work perfectly. But when you're conducting a clinical study, having a placebo control, something like that, where the placebo effect is real, it truly is a real thing. So comparing your ingredient to a placebo ensures that you are truly having an effect, not a placebo effect. making sure your study's well powered. Do you have enough people to be able to make the claims you're looking to make? Oftentimes you need a statistician to help you determine that based on what your hypotheses were for the study. Things of that nature.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, an example of what, like one of the, I think this is an example of a CRO, Dr. Jose Antonio's lab is kind of associated with the Nova Southeastern University, but I'm not sure if but he published the study we're probably going to end up talking about. So or at least he was on
absolutely.
It, so.
And that was more of a university. That was less of a CRO, more of a university partner. So there's multiple directions you can go when you're looking to have research conducted. Universities are great because when you're contributing to that research, you're also probably helping someone get their master's degree or their PhD, a student in that advisor's lab. Myself, I experienced that when I was in grad school. People would reach out from food industries and say, "Hey, can you look at this for us?" And my advisor would be happy. "Hey, they paid your bill for a couple months here. This is a good place to be."
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So like one of the CROs, maybe like Tim Zeigenfuss's Center for Applied Sciences, or I forget what it is. That might be more of a CRO. Okay, so what you mentioned, like getting into the roadmap and talking about like bringing a new ingredient to life. Can you kind of like give us like the rundown on how you envision a new ingredient to bring to market at NutriScience, and maybe we could use MalTor as an example of the process that kind of like starts from like whatever an idea at the water cooler.
Yeah, that initial ideation, absolutely. MalTor is a great example, and it's a pretty interesting roadmap from how we got from the beginning to where we are now. I think a lot of your listeners may also remember in 2023 there was a study that really came out looking at an increase in lifespan in rodents. I think it was specifically mice when taurine was supplemented into their diet. I think females had a 12% increase in lifespan and males had a 10% increase in lifespan. Obviously, that's in rodents, but that was validated in multiple other animals as well. So that's really where this initial ideation of taurine came into play. But that's just taurine. Where can you find some potential synergies with taurine? Where can you find an ingredient that is complementary and potentially gets you over just selling a commodity ingredient into selling a product that you want to conduct a clinical study on and dig deeper into? And in our case, after a lot of discussion, that was malic acid is what we came up with. For people that aren't familiar with malic acid, it's a natural L-malic acid specifically. It's a natural acid that occurs in a number of fruit products. You ingest it often, and there's some synthetic options out there where you look at D-L-malic acid, D-malic acid. Those things are not typically found in nature. So we were really, really clear on wanting and needing to use L-malic acid in this, and just looking at what, on top of what taurine does, which I know we'll probably talk about in some more depth later, looking at what malic acid does. So it's an intermediate in the Krebs cycle, or the TCA cycle, some people might refer to. It's really essential for cellular respiration and your body's ATP production. Really, it starts to get down to improving your body's efficiency of mitochondrial metabolism, which is a great pair for taurine and what taurine does biologically. So really, now that we had what we wanted to combine taurine with, it came down to, well, how do we want to combine it? It just dry blending two ingredients together doesn't really. There's really no special aspect to that. So what we did was we actually found a way to complex taurine and malic acid together and that improved a number of their physical properties as well. Anybody who's used malic acid before knows it's very hygroscopic. It just sucks moisture out of the air. It clumps. It's a pain to work with on production lines. Taurine has decent flowability, but not the best. So with this complex we formed, we really created something that has enhanced solubility, improved flowability, and is significantly less hygroscopic than the individual components themselves. And we have this complex. It is a patent pending complex, and just honestly is a pleasure to work with. Whether that be, the dose is around 5 grams, so there's not a lot of people who are using it in capsules. But for dry blend fills, it works fantastic. It flows down production equipment very easily, and it's great. It's great to flavor. It's malic acid. It's slightly tart. I mean, you could probably look at the C4 you're drinking. There's probably malic acid in there, and from a flavor standpoint, it just works really well.
There is, and it's right after beta-alanine, right before citric acid, and before beta-power betaine. So there's a decent dose of it, to say the least.
There you go. That's up there.
So yeah, malic acid, for those of you who like like Sour Patch Kids, and don't quote me on that, but like you like your sour candies and stuff, it's usually malic acid that's providing the sourness.
Citric and malic and tartaric are usually the trio that goes into candies and drinks and things like that to give you a well-rounded tart taste.
Right. So when you earlier mentioned that it's essential for the Krebs cycle, or TCA cycle, is it actually essential to get in the body, or can we kind of create the acid ourselves from other stuff?
You can create it from other things, but it can become rate limiting in certain situations. So supplementing it definitely does not hurt. And there's some research behind that shows that is the case as well.
Gotcha. And yeah, and so this all came from that taurine study. What I liked about that taurine study is that obviously we're never going to make a claim on this is going to make you live longer because it made mice live longer. That's not the point. What I thought was interesting, though, is that was one of the studies that kind of like exited our sphere. Like we're always talking about this in that study within our little, our social media and our groups, our LinkedIn and everything. That was a study that I saw many people who were like fitness influencers and diet people and just like not fully involved in the supplement industry, they were getting into that study as well and starting to look at taurine. So I kind of enjoy when like one of these creatine or one of these other ingredient studies kind of breaks out of our sphere of influence and gets out into the world. And so that one is like, I wouldn't say it went viral necessarily, but that study definitely, it got a lot of attention.
It really did, from news stories for people that rarely talk about our industry, things like that. It was prominent there for like 2 or 3 weeks. It just kept coming up again and again, and it really piqued our interest at NutriScience, and I think it piqued a lot of people's interest.
Yeah, and that's an important thing because I mean, way back when Red Bull came out and it had taurine, people were saying, "Oh, this is in bull's piss" or whatever, and it almost like gave a negative connotation to the ingredient itself back then. Although people loved the beverage, of course, like it took time for that, like stupid memes like that to kind of resolve. And I think all that news that came out there definitely was like good news in terms of, we know from all this research, like there are studies out there regarding taurine and mitochondrial health. I forget the exact title. I'll put it in the show notes and everything. But there's like one study that has like 200 or 250 citations talking about how good this molecule is for mitochondrial health. So then you mentioned the malic acid side of things getting involved in the TCA cycle. There's obviously some synergy there, and it sounds even cooler that it works on the machines even better too. So like synergy
it does.
in all ways.
And you know what you're bringing up about Red Bull when it first came out and a lot of the negative press. I think that's because taurine is a conditionally essential amino acid, which means if you are producing enough cysteine, you can produce taurine from that cysteine. So a lot of people are like, why do I need to take taurine? Why should I take more taurine when my body could produce it? but you need to remember you're producing taurine based on the amount of cysteine you are either intaking or producing. So in what it being conditionally essential, if you're sick, let's say you're immune compromised, you're sick, you're very stressed, maybe you're exercising aggressively, really really intense exercise, or let's say you eat a vegan diet. Let's say you're potentially not consuming all the necessary amino acids because maybe you're not strategically eating those aminos with complementary other vegetables that supply the other aminos. You could need to consume taurine, and it's readily present in animal products, things like that. But the world is kind of changing a little bit, where animal products are becoming very expensive, so they're not really achievable for the entire population anymore. Also, people are starting to realize, all right, we shouldn't have, even if you're not an everyday meat eater, maybe you've cut yourself down where it's like, oh, I have meat once a week as a treat, something like that. So supplementing in certain areas can be really helpful, especially with taurine.
Have you guys ever heard the conversations around taurine and caffeine?
I've read some of the research around taurine and caffeine. What exactly are you referencing?
This is like, I hate getting this comment.
Here we go.
And I'm a fan of taurine. Like, through and through, I'm a fan of taurine. It's like a joke in some of our comment sections how much I talk about taurine. But a lot of people say that it lowers the effectiveness of caffeine because it can be like kind of relaxing, which I just think is ridiculous because like, how much could it really like caffeine is going to wake you up and get you going no matter what. Like, I can't imagine taurine having a negative effect on that. But it's a consistent feedback that we get, even though huge fans of taurine here.
Maybe it's actually just reducing some of the negative effects of caffeine that people expect.
Yeah.
I mean, caffeine is obviously it's the most widely used drug that's out there. It's in a number of things, and I use it myself. With limits, obviously. I do enjoy a good pre-workout here and there. But there's so many negative effects people associate caffeine with if they're overdoing it. Heart palpitations, your heart racing, blood pressure changes, experiential things that you can feel. There's research out there that honestly shows the combination of caffeine and taurine together actually have very potent benefits for exercise health. But there's other things like look at suntheanine. There's research out that shows the combination of suntheanine and caffeine together. It's not ruining the effects of caffeine. It's taking away the negative effects of caffeine that a lot of people experience, the jitteriness, the crash, things like that. So, nothing to complain about, honestly. Those are positive improvements.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That was a really great answer. I've just always felt like even if taurine lowers the effectiveness of caffeine by 5 to 10%, the benefits I get from a gram to 2 grams of taurine like far outweigh that 5 to 10% of caffeine. Like that benefit is still net huge.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, like from my perspective. Okay, so the cool study that we saw on taurine and caffeine was on elite level boxers, which I think is cool because when you have elite level athletes, you kind of get some sweet stuff. They were using 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight. So if you're 175 pounds, you're getting a 476 milligram dose of caffeine. And which is no small dose, and they ended up having like improvements in like balance and agility, and just like it took away some of those jittery-ish type effects. Now, some of our followers who are listening are going to complain. They say when they take caffeine, they want to get smacked by the caffeine. But if you're an athlete who's trying to like do something like aim or be smooth, that's when you want the energetic effects of it, but you don't want
the shakiness. Yeah,
exactly. And so
nobody wants that.
and so the thing is, though, it was a high dose of taurine. It was what? It was like
3 grams.
That was a 3 gram study,
which is not 3 grams of taurine is a pretty neutral dose. It's a good dose of taurine, actually. It's a very effective dose of taurine. A lot of the research that's out there on taurine as a standalone is around 3 grams. So I think they used a great dose. The caffeine dose was steep. Anything over 400 milligrams a day, you start to see some reported adverse events typically from a heart racing standpoint. And I'm not I definitely don't exceed 400 milligrams in a day. I'm probably like a 300 total spread throughout the day. I'll usually try and save a lot of it for the pre-workout, and then otherwise maybe have an occasional soda that I probably shouldn't have, but
Yeah. All good. So yeah, and that's the thing is like so the research is pointing towards a higher dose of taurine. However, and there's some meta-analyses showing 500 milligrams, maybe 1 gram. But if you're looking at like this caffeine mitigation study, the 3 grams of taurine, we're not generally seeing that in many or any. I'm not gonna say any, but in many pre-workouts. So that's where I think using MalTor could possibly bring more than people are used to, because
I agree.
it's possible. I'm not going to say we're underdosing taurine, because there's some good stuff from just a gram. But if you have a larger dose, it does seem like
if you get to that
destroying the taste or anything.
No, it's not at all. Honestly, taurine is one of the more neutral amino acids when it comes to taste. It's not really that bitter. It's not like sticking in your mouth after you consume it. In the case of MalTor, you don't know it's there. You're tasting the malic acid, and you're getting that 3 gram dose. You're getting up to that 3 gram dose. It's a little over, and it's really unnoticeable from a taste standpoint. So it really doesn't impact. And you know what? We didn't just come up with the dose like loosey goosey. That wasn't what we did. There were I don't know if we can get into this now, but it's we did three animal studies, preclinical studies using the C. elegans nematode model, which is honestly, it's a great model because it's really one of the only feasible models where you can look at entire lifespan in an achievable way, because they live for a few weeks. So doing these models gives you a lot of insight. Also, they're essentially a muscle with a digestive system. That's really what these models are. So when you're looking at sports performance or like healthy aging benefits, it's a great model to start with. We did research what ended up being the human equivalent dose that is now in our recommended dose of MalTor. In these 3 studies, we started with a survival study. It's a great model to look at, where we looked at the individual components of MalTor. We also looked at creatine, and we looked at MalTor, the combination, and we saw this increase in survival rate with the combination that exceeded any of the individual components themselves. We did an activity study because these nematodes are constantly moving. It's essentially done on a chip, so you can load the chip with multiple C. elegans nematodes, dose, and then really measure their movement out of a set area. And we see this increase in movement and activity in the MalTor dose nematodes. And then finally, because they're really muscle fibers with a digestive system, we looked at muscle fiber integrity. And this we actually did. We looked at a lower dose as well. We did a half dose of what would be like a 2.5 gram MalTor human equivalent dose, and a 5 gram. Both significantly improved, but the 5 gram improved significantly more. So that's really what helped us choose this 5 gram dose of MalTor with this 2-to-1 ratio of taurine to malic acid.
Okay, so what are the final numbers? It's more than 3 grams of taurine, right?
It's it's 2-to-1 molar ratio of taurine to malic acid.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that ends up being just slightly above that dose of taurine.
Okay, perfect. So how do you with these nematodes, do you just kind of put the taurine or put the ingredient in like the water? Then you can't feed them, right? So
yes, exactly. You're dosing it into the solution they're in.
Right. And so basically swimming around in it, and so the ones who had both outlived the ones who had only taurine or only malic acid?
Correct. Significantly.
That's pretty cool.
Yes. It was really interesting. It was really interesting to see because obviously taurine has this lifespan increasing research behind it already. So to see that this combination taurine and malic improved a step up from that, it really fueled our reasoning for this synergy and made us want to go farther. Obviously, an animal study, you're not at the finish line with an animal study. But it gives you a reason to explore the far more difficult, far more expensive human clinical route afterwards. You need to have that justification. It's hard to have an idea and just go straight into a human clinical study, especially in the supplement industry. Maybe in pharma you can do that, but the supplement industry is a little more frugal, and we like to have a good rhyme or reason for what we're doing.
No, definitely. Yeah, we get into this a lot. Like no data is bad data, and yeah, we're not going to hang our hats on a nematode study, but we're gonna look at it for mechanisms. And were you able to tease out any mechanisms from that, or was it more just checking out if it works or not?
It was really checking out if it works or not with the the mechanisms of taurine and malic acid are pretty well defined. So it was less mechanistic and more like function, which is why we really did 3, with survival, with muscle fiber integrity, and activity. Activity's really interesting because obviously the older the nematode, the less active the nematode typically is. So you can really visualize that increase in activity in those older nematodes.
That's awesome.
It translates to humans. Maybe not directly, but you see the same trend happen in humans as they get older, less activity. And it's all about, healthy aging is really, it's been the up and coming topic for a while now. Lifespan, healthy aging, and it's not necessarily living forever. It might be some people's goal, but it's how do I age gracefully? How do I remain active and capable of living my best life as you get older?
Absolutely. So the study showed. So then based on that study, you start deciding how are we going to start targeting humans? How are we going to do a human-based study? And we appreciate that it seems like MalTor is taking at least starting with a sports nutrition angle to it, because
it is.
Yeah. And so is that because of the muscle health and activity, or is it just because we like to try new things first?
Column A, column B. I will say the sports nutrition industry often is the most innovative. It really is the industry that wants to try something first, and they're the most open. They're really the most open. It's typically a younger population, but we don't want to just appeal to a younger population, because when you start to look at the human clinical we conducted, a lot of it was focusing on delayed onset muscle soreness. I'm not sure about either of you. I typically go to the gym 5 days a week. I'll go 5 days a week, and I almost crave the days where I have delayed onset muscle soreness, because that's my indicator, like, I had a great workout. I had a killer workout. But it happens less and less. Now the people who really experience DOMS, maybe the weekend warrior, the people who are active but maybe not lifting typically. So following a DOMS protocol, it was very bicep flex oriented. So similar to what you described earlier on the taurine study with elite boxers, the population studied for MalTor, the pilot human clinical we did, it was really 15 healthy college-aged people. So we picked what I would describe as a tough participant to see a change in, because you have a group of people that are working out, they're young, they recover quickly, they're healthy, and we were able to see an improvement in that population. So that's really fueling some of our going forward ideation for what's next, because NutriScience really prides itself on what's next. And we tried to conduct really a gold standard study. I mean, we had a crossover design, so people could really be their own placebo. It was double blinded. It was placebo controlled. It was a 14-day study. That's also huge. Our target audience doesn't really like to take things that they don't know are working. If you don't notice something working in that first bottle, the likelihood you buy it again greatly diminishes. So the fact we were able to see an improvement within 14 days kind of makes this like a fast-acting thing. I'm not going to say it's experiential, because it's really, taurine and malic acid would not be an experiential product. But after 14 days, you were able to see this improvement in really a pain threshold, or a decrease in pain sensitivity due to an exercise. So the whole idea here is it takes away that potential excuse where you're like, I'm too sore to go to the gym, I'm too sore to go play pickleball, I'm too sore to go play basketball. It diminishes that. You might be a little sore, but you're not in pain, and you want to go to the gym, you want to do it again, and this helps you get there faster than if you weren't taking it. Obviously, you do a DOMS protocol, you often see a decrease in your 1 rep max. I'm not a big 1 rep max guy myself anymore. I feel like as soon as I turned 30, I was like, I might cut these out. I don't want to hurt myself. But the participants in this study, that's really how the DOMS protocol is conducted. And we didn't see significance here, but we saw a trend where after the DOMS protocol, which is 70 repeat bicep flex, trying to remember the percentage of your 1 rep max. Might have been 70% of your 1 rep max, 60 or 70% of your 1 rep max. Obviously, you go do your 1 rep max 2 days later, that is significantly decreased often. You can't do as much. We saw that decrease trended to be a lot less significant. Didn't quite hit significance, but it was a very clear, easy to see trend, which was great, helpful to see.
Very close to significance. Just missed.
It lets you know you're probably recovering faster, which makes sense based on these ingredients.
So I'm going to just read this from, I think it's a graphic from you. A DOMS protocol was followed doing 70 bicep extensions after taking the placebo or MalTor. 2 days later, they tested how much weight study participants could lift with a single bicep curl 1 rep max. So you're just tearing things up with 70
tearing
reps.
Things up. Yeah, okay. And you would absolutely, a lot of people would probably have muscles that were riddled in lactic acid. And that's really one of the mechanisms that the malic acid plays a role in limiting. You really see that malic acid has some research behind it that it can really help counteract that buildup of lactic acid and kind of aid you in your recovery efforts. And that's really what the study showed in part happened.
I like the way that you're putting perspective on this, because I think a lot of maybe mainstream folk would hear you say that, and they wouldn't think that like that delay in that better experience with DOMs would be that significant. But what people might not always consider is the adaptations that could occur from being able to get back in the gym. We talk about this kind of often, is like, if you're able to get back in the gym and hit it as intensely or maybe more intensely than you would have already, then the adaptations that come from that kind of training are the results that most people are looking for.
It's true. You said that perfectly.
Yeah, definitely more volume and everything too. So I'm not doing 2 days or anything, but for a lot of people that's important. So okay, so that's 5 grams a day, and that was pre-workout, right? I was kind of reading that. Is that generally the use that you're going to suggest, or does it matter?
Not necessarily. I really wouldn't say it necessarily needs to be pre-workout. It would be a good fit for pre-workout with how people are typically consuming it. I think it could also be used as a recovery product. You don't necessarily need to put this in combination with a caffeine or anything like that if you didn't want to. Based on the findings, I would say a recovery product would be a great fit. Other branded ingredients, maybe put an HMB in there and get some even more definition on your recovery claims that you can talk about. It could be a great fit in a pre-workout, though. You could pair it with creatine if you wanted to. I would say a good fit would also be potentially pairing it with electrolytes. You could do an electrolyte mix. Just based on how taurine and malic acid are working, taurine and calcium uptake in your muscle tissue for those muscle fiber contractions, things like that. NutriScience actually has a number of glycerophosphate really bound electrolytes, and those would be a good offering here, and kind of bypass some of the typical mineral salt issues that people have with taste, solubility, bathroom experience after you consume too much magnesium.
I was actually going to bring that up later on in this episode, that you have the magnesium glycerophosphate, which I'm forgetting the exact branded name of it, but it is by far, to me, the most acceptable, best tasting, kind of flavorless magnesium.
It's a good product, and it's not just magnesium. We have a number of glycerophosphates. NutriGP is the line. We have a calcium, sodium, magnesium. They're really great products, and they offer such a great hydration benefit. And there's some research out there about magnesium. People who take magnesium know some people are taking magnesium because of the bathroom benefit that you get from consuming magnesium. A lot of athletes are not taking it for that reason, or they're avoiding magnesium for that reason, when it's truly something that's essential and has so much great science behind it, and they don't want to experience the negative effects. But there's research that shows that the glycerophosphate bound magnesium actually it pretty much performed exactly like the placebo in terms of occurrence of diarrhea after consuming. Also, you look at glycerophosphate, you're getting the phosphate, which is also helpful and essential, and the glycerol, which your body's also utilizing. So it's really a kind of a great mineral offering in the sports space for hydration. That's really soluble. The taste is improved versus typical mineral salts. I don't know. It's useful. It can be used to supplement other minerals you're using too. Let's say you're getting some off tastes from some of your, like say you're using like sodium chloride, something like that. You want to cut down on that because the product tastes too salty, which is a common complaint on a lot of these hydration products. You can incorporate some sodium glycerophosphate, cut down on that salty taste. I know we got off topic there.
We did,
but...
yeah. No, I love it because you switched back into like Now Foods formulator mode, which is what I wanted to do eventually anyway. So you can mix it with HMB recovery in a pre-workout. One thing I would I wanted to say, and I wrote about this in the article, is that we oftentimes, you have L-citrulline in like every pre-workout, but if you really look at the research and all the meta-analyses and stuff, citrulline malate actually has more research and more studies published on it than L-citrulline itself. But we've kind of gotten away from having citrulline malate on the active part of the label. You oftentimes have just standard L-citrulline, 4 to 6 grams generally, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, and then malic acid might be in the bottom and the other ingredients in the flavor system.
Maybe.
But but I'm like, wait a minute. When we were on another project, and I was like, citrulline malate's the one that has all of it has more research.
It does.
So my thinking was, well, we could take I don't know how this will work regulatory wise or whatever, but if you demand that you have L-citrulline, I think adding MalTor there to get the malic acid component gets you closer to the actual research where citrulline malate was used. And I don't know if you can make claims on those because those were using citrulline malate. We also know that not every citrulline malate ingredient is truly bounded citrulline malate. A lot of it is just L-citrulline with malic acid.
Blended the two ingredients. Yeah, it's obviously less expensive to just dry blend two ingredients than to make like a fully bonded product.
Citrulline with MalTor, you get all three things. You get the taurine, the malic acid, and the citrulline. And I think it makes for a pretty cool pre-workout combination. So that was where my head went immediately when I saw the malic acid. I was like, oh, we could bring back the malate in a way.
It's honestly a great suggestion. I think that'd be a great combination for people in pre-workouts. It's already in there most of the time, honestly. So it'd be a good addition. Wouldn't really impact the taste in the slightest, especially the flavor systems people typically use in pre-workouts now. Most of them are tart, fruit flavored products, which would complement really well with MalTor. So that's a great idea. I mean, other branched chain amino acids would also probably be it would fit really well into an intra workout product as well. Like if someone's taking a hydration product or a hydration product that has some branched chains in there as well, it'd be a good fit. Help with the flavor and gives you some new claim language you could use that you weren't able to use before.
When we're talking about where it goes, I'm just reminded of how many different places we've seen taurine, like
it's
intros,
true.
Pre's, recovery. And it's funny because I would bet you probably have to like change the amount of malic acid you use in the flavoring system because this is going to add to that obviously. But pretty much every product we've ever used in any category has some part of that category has had taurine and some sort of acid with it. So it works in so many different places.
What you're saying is great too, because we've had a number of people that are working and formulating with MalTor right now and incorporating it into products they've had previously. And that's also the feedback we're receiving is, oh wow, I could just get rid of the acids that I had in my product. Like I'm able to just let me delete those acids, and I can just sub in MalTor.
As long as it's like a flavor that would be used with malic acid, like you're not going to be able to replace your citrics with this or not.
No, like if you had a lemon lime, you're probably using more citric than you are a malic. Malic really rounds out a lot of flavor systems though. So even in lemon lime cases, sometimes you see citric and malic, and then you'd likely be able to sub the malic out.
I was just going to say that in some cases it seems to like kind of bloom the flavor a little bit extra, so it could actually help out with a lot of flavor systems, which is kind of funny.
It could, like green apple. Green apple often uses malic acid. It's really common just because apple and malic acid go hand in hand. So people are often formulating any apple flavor, green apple, sour green apple, with malic acid.
Awesome. And then getting back to the longer term, like the longevity play.
Sure.
How would you use this? Okay, wait, time out. I have a question before that.
Okay.
Is this beverage stable?
Do
you know?
You can use it in ready to drink. Both taurine and malic acid are quite heat stable. So if you're going through like a retort process in your production or something like that, which most people that are doing ready to drink, if you're not requiring refrigeration, would have to process it in some way like that, you shouldn't be degrading taurine or malic acid at those temperatures. So yes, it can definitely be used in a ready to drink product or ready to mix. Or okay, honestly, awesome. we're talking to people that are, It's a lot of capsules, and it'd be a lot of gummies as well. But we have people that are working to formulate that. People are not really caring about how many gummies are required anymore, because they've come out with so many new techniques to make gummies where you're not just eating sugar. Like, it's not like I'm just pounding sugar in a gummy now. So if someone was like, you have to eat 10 of these, but they're like sweetened with like something that's more consumer friendly, and you're not also consuming 120 calories just to take this, it would work. It would work as long as you can deal with the acidity of the malic acid in a gummy.
Mm-hmm. It's just an excuse to eat more gummies, but
yeah, I'm not like the biggest gummy supplement guy. I mean, coming from Now Foods, I'm a capsule guy. But for any of my sports supplements, I love ready to mixes. I love it. I can travel with it, which is what I really care about. If I'm traveling for work, I try not to skip exercises. I'll work out in a terrible hotel gym, won't feel bad about it. I've been known to just do tricep dips and push-ups in a dirty floor hotel room as well, but do what you got to do sometimes.
I love it. Nice. So I was going to get back to, do you have any ideas on how you'd formulate a longevity supplement with MalTor?
That's actually something that we're actively talking about right now. Like I said, we kind of constantly look ahead at NutriScience. So we think a potential area of benefit for MalTor is going to be in the healthy aging category. Maybe not the college athlete that's working out 6 times a week, but really getting into that weekend warrior, getting into the person who wants to stay active as they get older. So that's really what we're looking at right now, which really kind of brings back like the mitochondria. How do I protect my mitochondria? How do I prevent mitochondrial dysfunction? Like decrease mitochondrial death, things like that. Looking at like inflammatory markers a little more thoroughly in an older population. So this is really what we're looking into right now as the next step for MalTor. What research can be conducted around that healthy aging category. I mean, you know how long it takes. Both of you know how long it takes to conduct a human clinical trial. It's not like an overnight thing. We're just getting started in really the planning phases, starting to think things through. But it would be a great. I mean, it'd be a great product in that space, just because it's already doing a lot of these things as it is. You can talk about heart rate. Taurine's really preventing like osmotic stress in your muscle tissue, which including your heart tissue. Calcium homeostasis, which is great for mitochondrial health as well. Really functioning as reactive oxygen scavengers, both the taurine and the malic acid, and helping with cell volume. Just some of that osmoregulation again with taurine, helping your muscle tissue helping things stay hydrated.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I was actually asking if you had any other ingredients to stack it with in that.
Oh God, sorry, Mike. Well,
that was awesome.
Let me just blab some more here. You know, when you think about this in the healthy aging space as well, something else that a lot of people, we're approaching Men's Health Month. It's June. June will be Men's Health Month. I don't know when this is going to come out, but could be near there. Thinking about heart health, thinking about bone health, things like that. Based on this combination, it's possible that putting this into a product that is more oriented around cardiovascular health could also be useful when you look at what taurine's doing in the body. So maybe mixing this with like a K2 D3 combination. looking at that combo of K2, D3, you're thinking like bone health, but it's also really has a huge cardiovascular impact. A lot of people are taking D3 for bone health, but you're not really directing where your body should be accumulating calcium when you're taking just D3. So taking like a K2 MK7 product plug here, obviously for NutriScience, we have a product called K2 Quest. It's an all trans K2 MK7. So in combination with that, you're really making sure your body is getting the calcium, putting the calcium where it needs to go, which is your bone, not in your arteries, which you don't want to do. And a lot of people are thinking, I take D3 for bone health. If you're not taking K2 MK7, it's a grayer area about where that calcium is actually headed.
Thank you for saying that. And magnesium too, if you're doing that. Absolutely. Okay, cool. I appreciate the ideas. And no, it's never a problem to plug. I'd never even seen this K2 Quest, so I looked it up real quick. Maybe that's one we'll have to get into. Awesome. Well, I have a throwback question way from the beginning. I don't think it has anything to do with NutriScience, but you mentioned sulforaphane, and I'm not sure if you have expertise, like if you've like published any papers on or anything, but it's an ingredient that's been discussed a lot that we've never really talked about on this podcast. Are you still like well versed in that? Or
I'm relatively well versed. It really starts to talk about some of the areas that the supplement industry can't talk about as openly. Okay. But to be honest with you, my advisor in college, she's the broccoli lady. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 broccoli researchers in the world that really have recognition. My PI in grad school was Elizabeth Jeffrey. You can look her up. I have published some papers in the broccoli cruciferous vegetable realm. I think I have 3 or 4 out there floating around from grad school. Really think about sulforaphane helping you detoxify. Cellular health, detoxification are the supplement-friendly language that people can use.
I am seeing the C word coming up here quite a bit.
Gotta dodge it. So
yeah, don't worry which one. Okay, very cool. Yeah, that's Do you think is this an ingredient that you've like wanted to talk about at NutriScience or anything, or you just?
It is. There's a handful of broccoli products that are out there on the market right now. Mm-hmm. I think there's always room for improvement. Sulforaphane itself, very short half-life. I think it's less than 24 hours is sulforaphane's half-life. So it's better to have the glucosinolate and an available source of the enzyme myrosinase, which together will form your sulforaphane compound. I'm a big supporter of broccoli in general. I know this is kind of more of a supplement talk, but you got to remember I am a food scientist as well. So, a plug for how people cook their broccoli: you steam it. You steam it in a colander, not in the microwave. In a colander. You want to preserve these compounds, and a lot of people don't steam it for 15 minutes. It's like a 3 to 5 minute. It looks nice. It's dark green. Does it have a little bite left? Yeah, but you're eating broccoli. Like, enjoy it for what it is.
I'm so glad you went there. I was going to try to goad you into talking about how to cook your broccoli. I went to college for dietetics, so learned a decent amount of things about like how to cook food for you boil your potatoes, don't pull the skin off before you cook them type stuff. That's really interesting. I remember when I was coming up in fitness, I'm about to reference some bro science. I actually don't know if there's any data behind this, but everyone always talked about broccoli for anti-estrogen benefits. So it's kind of interesting to see you take it in a much more just like food science direction without, the constantly needing to be talking about like hormones or like body composition.
Exactly. Like, I think we can agree most people are going to agree broccoli is pretty good for you. The cruciferous vegetables in general are pretty good for you. You have this family of compounds, glucosinolates, and you have this enzyme that's really primarily found in cruciferous vegetables, myrosinase. It's how do I preserve that enzyme? there's some conflicting research that shows some people are really good at their microbiome is good at converting glucosinolates and producing the active compounds after, and some people are not. So if you have the enzyme present, you don't really need to worry about it. The enzyme's going to do it for you. But how do I cook broccoli? And I know you're probably thinking, let me eat it raw. That's actually not as good as cooking it slightly, because you have something in there called an epithiospecifier protein that is more sensitive to heat than myrosinase. So you want to degrade that because it's going to push the formation to something. Sorry, I got real sciencey real quick, and I apologize.
This is awesome.
It's good.
And it's gonna push the formation, instead of sulforaphane, to an inactive compound. So you want to degrade that epithiospecifier protein while preserving myrosinase, and that's really the steam 3 to 5 minutes is your sweet spot, where you got rid of that protein, you kept myrosinase intact, and you're now eating the healthiest broccoli, or eating it the healthiest way you can.
That is awesome. And Dosz, the broccoli head.
I've been known as the broccoli guy at Now Foods, and a few people at NutriScience call me that as well. So
that's incredible. I honestly do hope you take some of your ideas there and bring it into an ingredient and come back on the show and tell us all about it. Like that would be full circle. That's so cool. Awesome.
Be happy to.
Yeah. I don't know if we have any other questions. I think kind of covered everything I wanted to cover and more. So I'm pretty excited about this one. If you have any closing thoughts, first off, where to follow you, NutriScience, and anything else, then let us know.
Sure. We have NutriScience has a pretty active LinkedIn page. I'm sure we'll also end up plugging this podcast when it gets posted. I try and attend as many of these conferences and shows as I can, hang around our NutriScience booth at most of them, love a great scientific conversation. So absolutely. Feel free. Anybody who watches this, you want to have a good conversation or talk science, I'm around.
Careful.
Invitation's open.
I feel like the cabbage people might come or something. I'm curious if there's other vegetable people.
I love cabbage too. We can talk about cabbage.
Cabbage is that cruciferous, or is that more like cauliflower, broccoli?
No, it is. It's in same family. A lot of people wasabi.
Oh,
wasabi.
Really?
No one thinks like wasabi. It is. I mean, radishes. There's like daikon radishes. People aren't really eating. But a lot of the wasabi people are consuming are actually radishes that are dyed green to give you that peppery, spicy taste. But actual wasabi, radishes, things like that, all fall in this family. So
cool. And Ben, I thought it was dim, or some of those like I3C.
Was it a dim that was supposed to be
indole 3 carbanols? Yeah, that's probably what Ben. That's probably what you were thinking about as well when you were talking about the hormone the hormone stuff. You really get into that with dim stuff, but I'm like the sulforaphane guy. I'm on the bandwagon.
I like that idea better. I always just kind of dismiss the idea that like eating broccoli could have a meaningful change in your estrogen overall. But not to say broccolis aren't very powerful. I'm definitely
detoxification, and cellular health.
Well, I think the problem was you weren't steaming it for 3 to 5 minutes. You're going way too long with that 15-minute.
Yeah, you might. I mean, some people really like soft broccoli. I've gotta argue with my wife over that sometimes.
Oh, no.
When I was in college, I just did the steamable bags and I microwaved it. I'm sure I was killing myself for it.
Those microwaves. Microwaves, in plastic as well as plastic's a touchy subject now, but the microwave is probably one of the most the harshest cooking methods you can have for broccoli. Stir fry it. You could stir fry it. That's also pretty good.
This has been awesome. Thanks, Ed.
Ed, thank you so much for coming on, man. I can't wait to do this again.
No, absolutely. It's great to talk to you guys. Hope you have a good weekend coming up.
Thanks.